It started like a royal fairy tale comeback. Fergie, once frozen out of palace life, was finally being welcomed back in. She smiled at royal events, cared for the Queen's beloved corgis, and looked like she had earned her second chance. But behind the polished charm, an old secret came roaring back. A leaked email revealed her private praise for Jeffrey Epstein, the same man she had publicly called a gigantic error of judgment. Overnight, the Duchess who preached about women's empowerment was accused of lies, greed, and hypocrisy. Now, as former staff spilled details about her outrageous demands and charities turned their backs, the question is, has Fergie's royal redemption just come crashing down for good? The comeback and the shock. For a while, it almost looked like Sarah Ferguson had pulled off the impossible. The woman once branded a royal embarrassment had quietly worked her way back into the palace's good graces. After decades of scandals, awkward interviews, and tabloid headlines, she was finally being seen again at royal events, smiling beside her daughters, and even caring for the late Queen's beloved corgis. King Charles had started inviting her to gatherings again. The same family that once wanted nothing to do with her now seemed to have forgiven her. People were beginning to think maybe Fergie had changed. Maybe the Duchess of York had finally found her peace.
On this show, we're discussing the bombshell email that Sarah Ferguson wrote to Jeffrey Epstein in 2011, asking whether this latest scandal will be her ultimate fall from grace.
But that illusion shattered overnight. Out of nowhere, a shocking email from 2011 resurfaced, linking her back to one of the darkest figures in recent history, Jeffrey Epstein, the same man she had publicly condemned and sworn to cut ties with. In interviews, she had called her association with him a gigantic error of judgment and assured the world she'd never speak to him again. Yet buried in that leaked email was a completely different story. She had called Epstein her supreme and steadfast friend and insisted she never labeled him a pedophile. It was a desperate message, part apology, part plea, and it exposed a side of her that the public thought was long gone. The timing couldn't have been worse. Just as Fergie was stepping back into the royal fold, this revelation pulled her right back into the shadows. It wasn't just about the email, it was about what it represented. For years, she had built her comeback around sincerity. She had written children's books, championed women's causes, and publicly supported her ex-husband, Prince Andrew, even through his own Epstein scandal. To the public, it looked like she was standing for something good again. But this email made all of that look hollow. It made people question whether her redemption was ever real or just another performance to protect her image.
Well, I mean, never say never, because as Andrew's just set out, that the kind of cash for access scandal seemed like that was going to be the end of any kind of public role for her, and she did manage to come back.
What made it worse was how personal the betrayal felt. Fergie had been given another chance, not only by the royal family, but by the public. People wanted to believe her story of growth and self-reflection. After all, everyone loves a comeback. She had been the Duchess who stumbled, fell, and somehow got back up. But the Epstein connection reopened every old wound, the greed, the debt scandals, the infamous cash for access sting, the feeling that she always blurred the line between royal privilege and personal profit. This wasn't just another tabloid headline. It was a reminder of everything the royal institution tries so hard to bury. Behind the palace walls, you can almost sense the tension. King Charles, who had cautiously supported her return, must be weighing the damage. After years of carefully rebuilding the monarchy's image after the chaos of Andrew and Harry, this was the last thing the family needed. Fergie had represented loyalty and stability, a former outsider, showing that second chances were possible. But now her name was tangled up in controversy again, dragging Andrew and the Yorks back into the kind of scrutiny they've been desperately trying to escape. And the heartbreak for Fergie herself, she must have felt it immediately. The same royal doors that had quietly opened for her could slam shut just as fast. The charities she worked with have already started to distance themselves. The goodwill she'd earned is evaporating, replaced by anger and disappointment. To many, she didn't just make a mistake. She betrayed the trust that took years to rebuild. The email that exposed everything.
In 2011, where she talked about it being a gigantic error of judgment. She said she'd have no contact with him whatsoever. She talked about the money that she'd borrowed
Back in 2011, Sarah Ferguson stood in front of the cameras and told the world she had made a gigantic error of judgment. She was talking about her connection to Jeffrey Epstein, the disgraced financier who had already served time for sex crimes. At the time, it seemed like she was trying to distance herself for good. She promised that she had cut all ties with him, that she wanted nothing to do with his money, and that she deeply regretted ever being involved. She even said she abhorred pedophilia and was determined to repay every cent she had borrowed from him. It sounded sincere, the kind of public apology that might finally close a dark chapter in her life. People believed her because she seemed humbled, almost remorseful, but behind that calm public image, a very different reality was unfolding.
Crawling email in which she described him as her supreme and steadfast friend, and that she had never called him a paedophile.
Just 6 weeks after making that statement, Fergie quietly sent Epstein an email that would one day come back to haunt her. The message, later leaked to the press, was nothing short of shocking. In it, she called Epstein her supreme and steadfast friend, a man who had been so kind to her. She went on to insist that she never referred to him as a pedophile. Reading those words, it felt like watching her entire public apology unravel in real time. How could she praise someone she had just condemned on national television? The contradiction wasn't subtle, it was glaring. And it wasn't just the phrasing that caused outrage, it was what it revealed about her character. The email gave the public a glimpse into the double life she seemed to be leading. One of polished statements in front of cameras and desperate pleas behind closed doors. According to reports, Epstein had lent her large sums of money to cover her debts. When she publicly distanced herself from him, he apparently felt betrayed. Fergie's email, many believe, was her way of trying to smooth things over, a desperate attempt to protect her reputation and keep her financial safety net intact. But the damage was already done. When that private message became public years later, it shattered any sense of trust she had rebuilt.
Well, it's a good question. I mean, it was shared, it came from a journalist called Daphne Barrack, who's actually very close to Ghislaine Maxwell. She did the interview with her in prison. So very well connected. She seemed to share it between The Sun and the Mail on Sunday.
The leak itself only made things worse. The email was reportedly shared by journalist Daphne Barrack, who had close ties to Epstein's associate, Ghislaine Maxwell. No one knows exactly how it reached the tabloids, but when it surfaced, it spread like wildfire. Major outlets, including The Guardian and People, published the story, each confirming that the email was genuine. Suddenly, everything Fergie had said in 2011 looked like a performance. Her supposed moral stand turned out to be little more than a press move. The timing was brutal. The royal family was already struggling with public trust after years of scandals involving Prince Andrew, and now his ex-wife was right back in the middle of it. For the British public, it felt like betrayal layered on top of betrayal. Many had forgiven Fergie before, like for her cash for access scandal, her messy divorce, her financial troubles. She had always been the royal who owned up to her mistakes, smiled through the shame, and somehow found her way back. But this crossed a line. Calling Epstein a supreme friend wasn't just tone deaf, it was morally outrageous. And it hit harder because she had made her living promoting herself as an author, a mother, and a philanthropist devoted to helping vulnerable people, including victims of abuse. The irony was painful. How could someone who claimed to support women and children also praise a man accused of exploiting them? It raised uncomfortable questions about how far she was willing to go to protect her own image and financial comfort. To many, the email didn't just expose her connection to Epstein, it exposed her mindset, one that seemed to value status and survival over truth. The outrageous demands and privilege. If there's one thing that has followed Sarah Ferguson throughout her life, in and out of the royal circle, it's her complicated relationship with money and privilege. For decades, people close to her have said the same thing. She just couldn't stop spending. Even after her divorce from Prince Andrew, when her royal paycheck disappeared, her taste for luxury didn't. Reports suggest that she was often drowning in debt, borrowing from friends, taking questionable business deals, and sometimes accepting financial help from people who expected something in return. That's how Jeffrey Epstein came into the picture, like a man she later called her supreme friend after he lent her thousands to pay off staff. The money solved her problems for a while, but it came with a cost that would haunt her forever. Behind palace walls, former staff have painted a picture of a woman who lived as if the royal lifestyle still belonged to her. She was said to make impossible requests at all hours, treating the staff more like servants than employees. They described late-night meals that had to be cooked from scratch, rooms that had to be rearranged at her whim, and a general sense that she believed the world still owed her royal treatment. It's that sense of entitlement, the feeling that she could always bend the rules, that her charm would make it all okay, that seems to have defined so much of her life. When people talk about her outrageous demands, it's not just about food or service, it's about a mindset that never quite left the castle. Even when she did, the British public has always had a soft spot for people who can admit their mistakes and move on. But Fergie's scandals always seemed to repeat the same story. She'd be caught doing something questionable, apologize publicly, then quietly slip back into the same behavior. That's why this latest revelation feels like a final straw for so many. The leaked email wasn't just a message to Epstein, it was proof that she was still operating by her own rules, still playing a game of charm and damage control. And when people learned she had accepted financial help from him, even after his crimes were public, it hit a nerve. It made her look like someone willing to trade integrity for comfort, all while presenting herself as a humanitarian and advocate for women. It's also impossible to separate this from her long, tangled history with Prince Andrew. The two have lived under the same roof for years, even after their divorce. Their finances, their reputations, their scandals, they're all intertwined. Both benefited from wealthy friends like Epstein. Both were accused of using royal status as a form of currency, and both seemed to live in a bubble where accountability never truly existed. While Andrew's downfall was public and catastrophic, Fergie managed to skate just outside the flames. Until now, the email and the reports about her behavior make it hard to ignore the parallels between them. They come off as two people addicted to privilege, unwilling to face a world where the royal title no longer shields them. What makes this story hit harder is that it exposes more than just one woman's mistakes. It reveals a royal culture that still struggles with the idea of accountability. The idea that status equals immunity, that charm can erase wrongdoing, that the public will always forgive because of the titles attached to their names. That's what's being tested here. For years, Fergie played the role of the relatable duchess, the down-to-earth one who laughed at herself and made the monarchy seem human. But that image doesn't fit anymore. The public is done laughing. Fallout, charities, reputation, and royal status. When the email leaked, the fallout came fast and hard. Charities that had proudly listed Sarah Ferguson as their patron began quietly cutting ties. Within days, multiple organizations, including children's foundations and health charities, announced they were reviewing or ending their partnerships with the Duchess of York. Some released carefully worded statements about protecting their integrity, while others didn't say anything at all. They just removed her name from their websites. According to reports from ABC News and CBS, the decision wasn't just about the email itself, but about what it represented, like a complete breakdown of trust. These groups rely on public support and donations, and having a patron linked to Jeffrey Epstein, even indirectly, was too heavy a risk. For years, Fergie had built her image on kindness and compassion. She wrote children's books, raised money for cancer research, and constantly reminded people that helping others was her life's purpose. But the revelation that she privately praised Epstein, a man associated with the exploitation of minors, completely shattered that narrative. Her apology back in 2011 had seemed like closure, a moment where she owned up and moved forward. Now it reads like a performance. The charities that once saw her as an ally now viewed her as a liability. Some of the groups she supported dealt directly with children's welfare. And that made the situation even more damaging. How could they justify keeping someone connected to Epstein on their list of patrons? The answer was simple, so they couldn't. The impact on her reputation was devastating. Fergie had always been known as the fun duchess, the one who smiled, made mistakes, and bounced back with humor and charm. She wasn't royal by blood, but she had a warmth the public could relate to. People forgave her financial troubles, her awkward interviews, even the cash for access scandal, but this was different. It wasn't clumsy or naive, it was morally questionable. When she called Epstein her supreme friend, it showed a loyalty that many found impossible to excuse. And when the email became public, it made her look dishonest. Someone who would say one thing to the press and another behind closed doors. For a woman who had spent decades rebuilding her image, that contradiction cut deep. Inside the royal family, the timing couldn't have been worse. In the last few years, King Charles had cautiously allowed Fergie back into the royal fold. She attended family gatherings again, took care of the late Queen's corgis, and even appeared at a Buckingham Palace event earlier this year. It was a quiet but clear sign that she had been forgiven. After all, she'd stood by Prince Andrew when no one else would, acting almost like his caretaker at Royal Lodge. For a while, it seemed like she'd found a new role, not as a scandal magnet, but as a steady, loyal presence. Then this story broke, and all that goodwill evaporated overnight. The royals understand better than anyone how much optics matter. The monarchy survives on image, duty, restraint, respectability. And now one of their own had once again been tied to Epstein, reopening wounds they were desperate to close. You can almost feel the frustration behind palace doors. After working so hard to appear modern and dignified, this scandal dragged them right back into the dirt. Insiders told reporters that the king was disappointed and that this could be the end of any public role for Fergie. In royal terms, that's the same as being erased. The British public's reaction has been equally cold. Even those who once defended her are now saying she's gone too far. Social media flooded with comments calling her shameless, tone-deaf, and a disgrace to the crown. The tabloids that used to joke about her clumsiness are now calling for her to step away for good. The question everyone's asking is the same: can she ever come back from this? What this means for the monarchy and us. The monarchy in 2025 doesn't live in the same world it once did. The days of blind respect and quiet deference are long gone. Today, the royal family stands under a magnifying glass where every word, action, and association is examined by millions of people who expect authenticity and accountability. The public still respects the idea of royalty, but not without question. They want to see responsibility behind the privilege, a sense that the people who carry these titles understand the weight of them. And that's why scandals like Sarah Ferguson's email hit so hard. It's not just a personal embarrassment anymore, it's a reflection on the entire institution that carries her name. Fergie's situation feels like a case study in how fragile that royal image has become. She isn't a senior royal anymore, but her actions still echo through the monarchy because of who she is connected to, the Duke of York, the late Queen's family, the King's household. When someone associated with that world appears to misuse their influence, it reinforces every criticism that people already have about the royals being out of touch or entitled. The timing couldn't be worse. The royal family has been working overtime to modernize their image, focusing on charity, service, and empathy. King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales have emphasized transparency and compassion. Yet, scandals like this pull them right back into the old narrative of privilege without responsibility. What makes this moment even more significant is how the public sees through excuses now. In past decades, royals could hide behind press statements or palace protocol. Not anymore. When a leaked email shows Fergie calling Jeffrey Epstein her supreme friend, it's not just gossip, it's evidence. People see it instantly, share it, debate it, and form judgments that spread faster than any official response can keep up with. And in that sense, her downfall says something bigger about fame itself. Whether you're royal or not, the world no longer separates public image from private behavior. The two are one and the same. This scandal also raises uncomfortable questions about the system that allows this kind of behavior to repeat. How does someone who once lost it all manage to climb back into royal favor only to throw it away again? Maybe it's because the monarchy still struggles to define where the line is between forgiveness and accountability, between loyalty and enabling. In Fergie's case, the royal family's compassion might have worked against them. She had been welcomed back into events, trusted again, given space to rebuild, and then, just like before, the same issues resurfaced. It leaves many wondering, is this a personal flaw or a sign that the institution still hasn't learned how to deal with scandal from within?
Below articles and papers now, even from quite right-of-centre papers that you would think would be pro-monarchy, and there are real worries about the abuse of privilege.
I think the blurring of...
For the rest of us, watching from the outside, it's a reminder of something much simpler but deeply true. Reputation can't be bought, and privilege doesn't protect you forever. The monarchy's glamour and history may draw admiration, but what keeps people's respect is behavior. Fergie's story proves that no matter how high your title or how polished your apology, the public remembers actions, not words. And when those actions clash with the values you claim to represent, trust is nearly impossible to rebuild. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below. In the comments below.